Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hi, I'm Becky Parker Geist. I am the host of the Audiobook Connection podcast, Behind the Scenes with the Creative Teams. I'm also president of Bay Area Independent Publishers Association and the CEO and founder of Pro Audio Voices and Amplify Audiobooks, providing audiobook and podcasting production, distribution, and marketing. And today I am excited to have with me Mary Berelson. She is the author of Bicentennial Summer, a coming-of-age journey across America. Mary, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So tell us a little bit about your background, kind of where you grew up. What was your childhood like a little bit?
Well, I grew up in Kirtland, Ohio, which is the first destination or the first leaving place on the road trip in the book. And it was a pretty idyllic childhood. I had an older brother, then me, then younger twin sisters. We had the house on the corner out in the country with the rope swing and the vegetable garden and the berry patch and the sandbox and the dogs and all the people in the neighborhood would come to our house. And, we had great imagination games with the neighborhood kids, the kind of childhood that we boomers might remember where you're out all day long in the summer and your mom puts out a big watermelon and closes the door and says, have fun. Yeah. And you just stay wet and barefoot all day and climb trees and play your recorder up in climb a tree and played my recorder a lot.
That sounds a lot like my childhood. Yeah.
I feel very lucky that I had that type of childhood, and I always tried to bring a lot of freedom like that into my teaching career as well with my little kindergartners and first graders, because it just seems like even 30 years ago when I started teaching through now, as of course much worse, they're just so scheduled and not like they shouldn't be in car seats. Of course they should be in car seats and buckled and all that, but just like their parents are involved in every part of their day, except for the time that they're at schools, the play dates and the after school things and all that. So this, reading this book might bring some of the readers a little slice of that nostalgia of so much freedom and a little bit of unsafety growing up in the 70s.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, you really called up a lot of childhood memories for me just with your short list. All those.
Well, we had a creek. We just had so much fun. We made ice cream. And had sprinklers and played games, and we're in the mud all the time. It was fun.
Yeah, totally. And so, what was it that led you to write this book in the first place? Kind of, what did you have an interest in writing as you were growing up?
I wouldn't say so much writing, but I love to tell stories. And we did have this, I would often be like maybe in my young 20s or the end of my teenage, starting college and stuff. I also traveled abroad a little bit. And so people, what do you do? And just answering questions about, or maybe even playing that game, Two Truths and a Lie. I'd always toss in as what they would think is the lie, but wasn't, was when I was 13, I traveled across the country with my younger twin sisters and my dad, and we broke down in Texas and had to hitchhike home. And so, of course, they would think that one was not true, but that was the true. And so and there was just a lot of anecdotes from that real trip with poison ivy and the Chinese restaurant. And I told my daughters those stories, and my husband's heard a lot of them. And so people have always said, you should write a book, you should write a book. And so COVID finally gave me a chance where all of a sudden I had a lot of time, and I'm someone who really likes to fill time up with creative things. So I thought I would be that I'd try it. I gave myself a goal. I started in 2020 right before the school year was, as a teacher, we just think school year. So in May, started April or May, started writing, plodding along, not knowing what I was doing, just writing almost like a journal of things that happened in chronological order before I learned much about the craft of how to make that story have more tension and more internal connections and make it more interesting for the reader to want to find out, what's going to happen next. Because if you don't have that in a book, you might be missing the point.
Yeah. Cool. So and how was the writing process for you? Since did it feel like a struggle? Was it just fun?
No, it really wasn't. But I would have to say, as I was going, once I turned it from memoir to novel, then it became really exciting because I didn't really, not like the memoir was much different, but it just the whole way it turned around in my mind where I could make the character do something much worse. So the other character would have something to interact with, just became very exciting. And it felt like, people, I don't know. I had heard this before, that authors say something like the story is outside of them or it's in them, but it's just sort of like flowing out of their hands or into their computer or whatever it just was really kind of amazing. I would get so caught up in it that I'd go to bed late writing and then wake up in the morning and just go back, a couple of paragraphs and keep going. When I was super into it, I could not, and I'm an avid reader, I could hardly be friendly. I didn't want to talk to other people. I didn't want to read other books, really listen to music with lyrics. I didn't want any other stories going on. So I would just, and because it was almost like I was hearing my story or reading my story as I was writing it. It was really bizarre to be the creator and the receiver. And so when I was all the way finished with it, asked how it ended. And because it had been a while since I had turned it in for developmental editing and that part of the process where I had forgotten. I wasn't even sure because I had done a couple of different endings and it was like the story was almost new to me as I was writing it.
That's cool.
Really kind of magical because it's sort of a fun way to, spend time. You had all that COVID time and you're going on walks and staying away from people can fill some of the time, but that's a lot of time.
So it really gave you a chance to really focus in. Is that I know that you've pursued many other creative things, music and textile arts and stuff. Is that sort of your MO that you just really focus in or something? Or was this a unique kind of approach or a new? I would say I have a lot of tenacity when it comes to learning new creative pursuits. So I get pretty good at painting and then I get kind of tired of it, even though I have all the supplies. Yeah. My daughters joke that my office is basically like a craft store. Any craft you could want to do. We could do wood burning or anything with needles and thread. And so I'll get really into something. One thing I have to say, though, is quilting has maintained as I've even though I've learned lots of other things, quilting has been something. And maybe it's because I keep learning new techniques because it's always about the learning for me. I really like I don't mind the fumbling. Maybe that's why I also like teaching kindergarten and first grade because I can sincerely model, it's fun to make the mistakes and to start over and to learn from that mistake so that the next time you do it better. So that's actually, I think, a big part of my whole being is I like to start things and I like to finish things. So I don't really like messes. So a lot of times, even in the middle of quilting where you'd have blocks all over the place, I'm still pretty tidy. So I kind of like visual order. And writing a story, there's definitely order. And so I'd write a little bit and then I'd come back and go back a little and then go forward and then go back. So I felt like almost felt like sewing. It was like one of those stitches that kind of keeps linking forward, I'm sure, in embroidery. And that's another thing. I really don't know a lot of the terms and stuff. I can do a lot of this stuff, but I don't know the painting terms and the names for all the different embroidery stitches, but I can embroider. Yeah. That's really interesting. And I know many authors, I have to count myself, at least partly among them, who start things and then they linger. They don't necessarily come to completion. I have published a few, but definitely. That's hard. It's hard to go all the way through. And everybody says, "Oh, I could write a book. I'd like to write a book." It's like, okay, but can you keep going the whole way through? I am pretty goal oriented as well, and I made myself 2 goals. I started in that end of the school year 2020, and I wanted it to do. I gave myself until I retired.
And I finished my last school year of 2023 in that June. I had to work a little bit longer in that following fall for retirement sake, but I wanted to be done with it by then. And then done, meaning like the first draft.
Yeah.
And then, and it took that long.
Yeah.
It took that long, especially because I felt like I had to, once I went from memoir to novel, I had to totally redo the entire beginning. And then there was a really cool, and I also kind of I got much, much better with practice. Like if you open the book to the second half, like, oh, that's pretty good writing. And then you go to the beginning, like, okay, we're in about 7th grade, trying to get a little better. So I went, because the character, it's from a 13-year-old's point of view. So I was thinking maybe the reader could think, well, she's actually getting better as she's practicing writing this whole time. But I think in the editing process, I have actually improved the beginnings. Hopefully, I've been in book club for about over 30 years, and I feel like book club people are always like, "Oh, it started kind of slow. It's too descriptive." Please don't say that about mine. If you could find any tension in it, and you want to, every time you put it down, you're excited to pick it back up, that would be a good thing. And if you laugh out loud at some of the scenes, I thought they were funny. They made me laugh out loud.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah. What's so funny? I'm like, well, you should hear this scene. It's very funny.
Yeah. How was the editing process for you? So you worked with a developmental editor, and then did you later work with another, like a copy editor?
I worked, another thing, I did a lot of research for the book. Like I wanted to make sure that anything I said could have happened, as far as like if that hotel existed at that time, or I said something about a store that we went to, was it in existence in 1976? So almost everything is pretty possible in the story. But as far as not loving research, I heard about a couple of different full service hybrid publishing companies. And I just, besides the one goal of being done by that 2023, right before the end of the school year of the first draft done, I also wanted to get it into a publisher. And my writing coach was talking about, this is the part where you send it in and you send 100 manuscripts in, you get 99 rejections. And I was like, no, thank you. I'm 100% not interested in that. I already don't want readers to go, it started slow. I'm a little sensitive when it comes to criticism, I'd say. And I didn't do that much research. I found one that looked like they offered an awesome product. Publish is who I went with. I called them. Excellent. My goal was to get it started publishing before the end of the year. And so on December 28th, I called Publish on the phone, which who even calls anybody on the phone anymore? And it was after hours, and the CEO and owner of Publish answered the phone, and I could tell she was probably around my age, was excited about the content of the story, and was very welcoming and encouraging about the prospect of working with me. So I accomplished the two goals: the when could it be done by, and when could I start getting it published. And once I turned it in for the developmental edit, they took about 3 months to do that. And I just stopped thinking about it. It was amazing. I just could read other books. We had moved recently, so I could work in my new house and in the garden. And I live in this area and making new friends and connections and that kind of stuff. So, it was awesome that I had those 3 months off, and then I got it back, and I can't tell you, I don't even know the developmental editor's name. When I said something like, can I please thank so-and-so, they said, oh, just say thanks to the Publish editing team or something. But boy, I really, really wanted to thank this editor, because what she gave me, besides such good advice, was the kind of encouragement that my Ohio Protestant work ethic need encouragement. Upbringing needed, because I could tell that she was into the story. Mm-hmm. Her comments went from, we need to add tension here, let's move this here, what if we tried this, and sort of nitty gritty moving things, mm-hmm. to, oh no, how could Ralph do that, to Mary, stand up for yourself, or whatever. So I felt like she was rooting for the characters. And great. Once that was happening, it was just so heartwarming to me that it was resonating with somebody. Because, sort of, when you put something out there, I'm always embarrassed when I look at something. I keep a 5-year journal, and I'll look back at what I did 3 years ago today or whatever, and I'm embarrassed by myself reading my own entry from 3 years ago about word choice or, oh, brother, that was dumb to say, and to have somebody, because it's embarrassing, or it can be a little, you're just putting yourself really out there when you're writing. I mean, it's any art, but writing is like a quilt. It's kind of, even though it takes a lot of time to make one, it's pretty small and only a couple people see it. It's like on that person's bed. So it's not really the hundreds of thousands and millions that I want to hear this story, because I think it's really good. Anybody who has been a child and is kind of worshipped or idolized a parent and then sees that parent for being just, someone who got here 25 years before they did and is really just a big person who has whatever they have going on, is maybe, they can relate to it. And certainly the boomer types who want to be nostalgic about what was happening in 1976, there's all that. And it has a great map. You go all across the country. I think it would make a great movie, just the cinematography of going across the country with those types of costumes and cars. And one of the dreams I have is that I'm just going to I live in Tennessee now, near-ish to Nashville, and I know that Reese Witherspoon lives around here. So my dream is I'm just going to be walking around with my book in hand at a Costco, perhaps. Shop at Costco, but this is my dream. I've actually had it dream in nighttime, and then I just keep going on it in the day now. But I'm just going to be walking along and have my manuscript and say, Reese, I know you're looking for next month's Book of the Month Club, and just give it to her, and she's going to love it because it's got, female forward characters and all that. But it would make a great movie, I think. And then Dakota Fanning is going to hear it, and she's going to want to do another re-recording of the audio. Although I really like the way I've got it set up with you audio people as a single narrator instead of a full blown cast, because it's told from a 13-year-old's point of view. There has to be some naivete and a little bit of what the voice actor can do as the character, instead of it being sort of a production with the different voices, because there's characters that have a French Canadian accent and a Chinese accent and a Mexican accent and a Southern trucker accent and a hillbilly grandma accent, and a Dolly Parton accent. So there's a lot of characters they meet across the country. So I'm looking forward to hearing what my narrator is going to sound like.
Yes. I also, by the way, had a developmental editor that I worked with who has now passed on, but he was wonderful to work with and also gave me that kind of encouragement and
nice. And
at the same time, being appropriately critical of the things that, you don't need this page. Okay.
But that was a hard part. Even though it was well told and beautiful, it's like, we can't get rid of that frog scene. That was so, did you see that description? But, you already said something with the turtle scene that kind of went about that nature and the water thing. So maybe you don't have to include that again. Yeah. It was really hard because after the developmental edit, then I had to take those points and reduce. I did not make the goal. I had it at about 115,000 words, and it was supposed to get down to 100 and did not make that goal. But you know what? Some part of it, if you're doing this hybrid thing, you're being given advice. Thank God, because on the one side of me not knowing anything, I didn't know about ISBN numbers for 4 different formats and how to get an audio. Right. I mean, come on, nobody knows that, right? Unless you do that. But also selling it to some already big company who takes almost all your royalties. I assume that would be how that goes. That's right. They might manage it all, but then just like I was saying before, I really like learning. So learning about publishing was a kind of I wouldn't say fun process. It's slightly less creative than some of the other things, but it makes me think that I could, let's say this becomes successful, I could maybe do a sequel, because Jerry and Mary in real life, me and my sister, traveled from Kirtland to California via the East Coast. So this story that is in Bicentennial Summer is just traveling west and then back, but doesn't have any of the East Coast. Well, my sister, when we were 18 and 21, took a trip moving away from Ohio and moving to California on a 3-month road trip in another little French car. Ironically, a different brand. The one in the book was a Peugeot, and then the one we were driving was a Renault. the car, when I don't know if you remember those, they almost like a matchbox car. They had we had four doors and a sunroof. The sunroof like opened the whole top, and the four doors were like I said, like miniature things. So that was our around the trip car for that road trip. And then we ended up growing up and having families in California after moving out there. And she kept a journal that we found recently that I could maybe write another type of travel novel, but this time with characters that maybe will be beloved. Maybe people will like Mary and Jerry and want to know what happens to them, 8 years down the line from when this story was told, and see how they've grown up, because you can just imagine all the things. I mean, what was the 13-year-old learning, and what is the 21 and the 18-year-old learning? So that's a little exciting to me, because having gone through that process of learning how to publish, that seems, for that to be a one and done is kind of a lot of effort to not maybe capitalize on again, knowing a little bit more that I know now.
Yeah. And what would you say that Bicentennial Summer addresses? What kind of issues or themes, or what do you hope that readers or listeners will carry with them after listening to
I think just in life and in the story as well, is people should be fast forgivers. Holding on to grudges, living in the past when you're mad at someone did something to you, or worrying about something that's not even here and being all anxious about something in the future is just not what life should be about. You should be in this moment. And so the book is about, or addresses some themes of the 13-year-old trying to learn that. And there's a lot of, like I said, I think people should be fast forgivers. When someone slights you, that's them. When they're doing their life and making their mistakes, yeah, it can affect you, but how much do you want it to affect you? Or can it just affect the situation, but not you? And that's up to you. You have 100% control over your reactions, your emotions. And I think people learn that later in life. So maybe with this 13-year-old, anytime you read a book that's told from a child's point of view, like Because of Winn-Dixie or The Glass Castle, anything that's sort of told from especially girls, I don't know, those are the ones I like. They're always much more precocious and adult than a real human would be, because they're a character, right? And they've got to be.
They have a mature perspective that they're written.
They have to have a more mature perspective. Yeah. And that was a little bit hard to write too. Like, was I writing this? Was the point of view a couple months after it? Was she still 13? Or was it a 61-year-old writing about what happened when she was 13? Because, that's tricky. Like there's no references whatsoever to like, well, back in the day before the internet or anything like that, or no well, if only we had a cell phone. So there's no modern comparison. So I think it feels like it's told by her just after it happened, like in the fall after they get back from their trip. I guess I also wanted people to see, I mean, it was my one sister who's passed away, Jill, and Jerry and I, when people asked us as adults, how was that hitchhiking? I mean, I said hitchhiking across America. It was only from Texas to Ohio, so it wasn't across America, but it's about 2,000 miles, pretty far. The one sister, Jill, said it was like the worst experience of her life. And for me, it was a highlight of my childhood. Who can say in a game of two truths and a lie that they literally hitchhiked across America when they were 13? So I always thought that was like a feather in my cap as a cool thing that happened when I was little. So just the references to the 1976 culture, the CB radios and the convoy song and smoking cigarettes and letting the kid drive the car and no seatbelts and all kinds of crazy things that we would have done sort of normally back then. So that's in there. I'm not sure it's much of a theme, but it's more of just like the tone of it, of this kind of a little bit reckless traveling. And then the dad is just crazy. He's just like a big boy who now has his daughters who act older than he does often. He oogas his horn when he says goodbye, and he's flirts with everybody. And and I made him as icky as possible so that the 13-year-old would have lots of things to be, teenaging about.
Yeah,
about
mortally
him.
Embarrassed about.
Yeah, exactly. And just the nostalgia of all the different places. I keep looking over here on the side because I've got this map but like Mount Rushmore and the Great Salt Lake and Lake Tahoe and San Francisco and Santa Cruz. And they went down through Big Sur and got poison oak and had to go to Mexico to a doctor, and the Grand Canyon and the Salt River. And most of those things happened. Obviously, the story makes them much more interesting because I don't really remember a lot of those things that happened.
Let's take a short pause, and when we come back, we'll talk about the audiobook production process.
Thank you.
In the summer of 1976, 13-year-old Mary embarks on an unforgettable cross-country journey with her father and younger twin sisters. What begins as an exciting road trip in their beat-up car, Blue Pierre, soon unravels into a chaotic adventure as their father's decisions force them into unexpected situations. Traveling through iconic American landscapes from Mount Rushmore to Yellowstone and San Francisco, Mary grapples with the growing realization that her father is not the hero she once believed him to be. When the trip takes a disastrous turn in Texas, leaving them stranded, Mary must find the strength to navigate their way home to Ohio, hitchhiking with strangers and confronting the painful truth about family, loyalty, and growing up. Set against the backdrop of America's bicentennial celebrations, Bicentennial Summer is a coming-of-age story about love, disappointment, and the bittersweet journey of understanding the people we cherish most. Get your copy today on amplifyaudiobooks.com. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the audiobook production process.
Okay.
So at the time of this recording, we are in process, but you have been through the casting. So you chose Hannah Trusty to narrate your audiobook. Can you tell us a little bit about that decision and the process and how it went for you?
Remember I said before that once I found a company that was good enough and seemed like they offered a great product, I was satisfied with it. I'm not the kind who paints 12 different almost identical yellows on the wall and then says, oh, that's the one. I'm like, if it was blue and now it's yellow, that's already a good enough change. But I'm going to pick the yellow that strikes me first. Uh-huh. So with that in mind, I picked Publish as my publishing place. And then they referred me to Amplify Audiobooks or Pro Audio Voices. And I just called you guys. It was also another phone call and got hooked up right away. They got me involved with the casting, which I thought was really wonderful. You guys actually chose 3 different parts that reflected a couple of different accents that I was curious if they could master or handle, and something that was a bit confrontational, so I could, so you could see how does in a conflicting scene, how do the two voices, the daughter and the father, sound with each other.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I don't know how people in sound do it. I'm so visual. If it's just like jiggle, 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 jiggle of, what sound looks like, it's so hard for me. So it's just the person's name, right? So I'd listen to the one and then the next one. Oh, that's the slow one. That's the fast one. Oh, that one sounds too young. That one sounds too old. And I would always tell my students, whenever you don't like something, you can't just say, I don't like it. Why? Because that's not a reason. Why? It's too something. Why don't you like that shirt? It's too scratchy. It's too tight. It's too big. It's always too something when you don't like something. If you liked it, everything would be fine. If you don't like it, it's because it's too something. And I don't know why I'm talking about this. But I couldn't, I just got mixed up about who was who. And so then I would just try to narrow it down a little, but I think in the end, I mean, Hannah Trusty, I really liked her. She had a good sort of a slightly whininess to it, which I thought would be good for that 13-year-old. At times, there's other times she doesn't need that at all. But I kind of, at the end, I liked her name. And her voice was beautiful. Yeah. But I feel like I did actually really appreciate the Pro Audio Voices people picking their top selection and letting me choose from those. It must have been like 8 to 10 or something. And I did narrow it down, but I bet if and this is probably you might want to take this out, but I bet if I'd have thrown a dart at a balloon and Hannah Trusty's name would have come out, I would have been happy too, just like that yellow paint. She sounds really good.
Well, our job was
all of them sounded like they could do it, but I liked her. She sounded youthful. She sounded young and exciting and excited. So I think that's something that the characters in this book, they're all like, I mean, every day is an adventure, so I wanted an adventurous voice.
Yeah. And our job is to, in that casting process, is to provide you with a range or a selection of voices where, yes, you could, throw a dart and any one of them would be fine, because we've already vetted out based on a conversation with you by our casting director. She vetted out the ones that didn't seem like the right fit for your project. Not that they wouldn't be good fit for some other project, but, it's all about getting the right one for yours. And so you mentioned, and I wanted just to bring it up again about the several accents that you had. So you've had a diverse set of characters in the book. When you started the process, did you come in having any concerns about that with the audio?
I'm a pretty good reader. And when however, two things. I thought, one, I could narrate my own book, but I can't even roll my R's. I'm bilingual in Spanish and cannot roll my R's, so I wouldn't be a very good Doctor de Mexico. And I couldn't do that voice. I thought I would do a really bad job at the Chinese, sort of the broken English Chinese waiter voice. And I thought it would even be racist and poorly done. So I didn't want to do it. And then also just reading out loud, getting ready for a Meet the Author event, just reading out loud a chapter. It is hard to do it error-free. And so besides thinking I could do it and realizing, no, I cannot, there are lots of different characters' voices. And even though I didn't want it like a full casting where there would be a different actor doing those different voices, because I think it needed to be told from that 13-year-old point of view and her interpretation of the dad's talking and the sister's talking to her and that kind of thing. But the voices are a French-Canadian mother, there's a bunch of like trucker guys. There's a Chinese waiter. There's some surfer dudes in Santa Cruz and San Francisco. There's an Irish cop. There's a Mexican doctor. There's a Dolly Parton impersonator. There's a Southern trucker. There's a hillbilly grandma. So there's all these voices that I could not do. And I'm hoping that Hannah can do. Hannah can do them well.
Yeah. So, and just to highlight what you had expressed earlier about how it included in the audition process were some of those main accents that were of particular interest, that she get them right.
I think they wanted to. The ones that the casting director chose were a scene with the French Canadian mother and the Mexican doctor. And I guess the Chinese one, they weren't that concerned about. Like she thought, because it's speaking English, but sort of in broken English. And then a scene that had a lot of conflict in it, so they could see how the daughter and the father would sound in that scene. So one was like pretty explosive, and then two were more different voices. And that was really fun hearing these different people. And also the main thing was I wanted someone who sounded young. I wanted somebody who didn't sound like they were a grown up, that they sounded like a teenager.
So is there anything, now I know that, again, at the time of this recording, you haven't I don't think you've heard any of the recording as yet. Is that right?
Not yet.
Not yet. So exciting. So this is early in the process, but just in the process so far, is there anything that you have experienced in the audiobook production part that stands out to you? Or has
been really fun. Working with Elias,
so Elias is your project manager. He's
my project manager, and like I was saying before, I'm a little embarrassed, to like put it out there, and then to actually talk about this particular line, and whatever. It's like it really sort of represents you, and if someone doesn't think it's good, then they don't think I'm good. And that's sort of hard. So I felt very accepted. They're like, it sounds like they're excited to do it, and the funnest part to me so far was working with him and saying, could we have some sounds in it? Not like a full-blown thing where there's traffic and there comes the wind and that kind of stuff. More like a couple of key points. And so we started off with 5 to 7, and I think we're up to 20. And we promised we wouldn't do any more. But they the book starts with the daughter and the father doing a flag raising ceremony, raising a flag up the flagpole, and the daughter she plays trumpet, and she's playing reveille and assembly in the morning. And so I think there we'll have a little trumpet background there, and there's a part where the train does a unique sound in Truckee, California, and so he's going to play that particular long, short, long. So we have that. So there's about 20 different little things. And once we got near the end, I'm like, okay, the dad's always oogaing his horn when he leaves places. Right. So when I mention oogaing, it's not there, but when he's actually oogaing, we'll have that. And then he's like, okay, but I think we had enough. I said, okay, just one more. When they get home and the dog loses itself in joy when they show up and is barking its head off. Let's just have one there. And he goes, okay, no, we're crossing into it's getting a little bit too much. I said, okay, no more. That's it. Just the last thing with the dog, and then we're good.
Well, tell our listeners, if you would, where they can learn more about you and your writing.
Thank you. They can go to www.bicentennialsummer.com. And I have a TikTok, bicentennialsummer.com, and a Facebook page, bicentennialsummer.com, and an Instagram, bicentennialsummer.com, which just get on there and help spread the word, because it is a whole other thing to learn that I have slightly less excitement about the whole social media world. And even finishing up my career in technology with middle schoolers, one of my main thing was trying to get the kids off of tech, even though I'm trying to teach them how to do design and things with technology. But boy, I just see a lot of negative ramifications with too much technology with young people. And
yeah. And so you mentioned the possibility of a sequel for Bicentennial Summer.
Yeah, having learned all that publishing information, it seems like I shouldn't let that go to waste. And my sister kept a journal when Jerry and I traveled from Kirtland from Ohio to San Francisco via Boston and down that coast with a month in Jamaica, and then back up, full of all kinds of young adult adventures 18 and 21-year-olds can have. And she kept a journal that will make it so much easier. So now I know a little bit more about how to write a story. I know a lot more about how to get your book out in the world, how to publish. That writing the next story might be a super exciting next step for me.
Yeah, that sounds great. So when this podcast goes live, your audiobook will be available on Amplify Audiobooks. And we always encourage our listeners to help spread your message and increase your impact by getting the audiobook on Amplify Audiobooks. And you can get it on amplifyaudiobooks.com. So Mary Berelson, author of Bicentennial Summer, thank you so much for being with me today.
I appreciate it so much. Thanks a lot, Becky.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.